Okay, so we are looking at God's decree, and what we did in the last session was to define it and exegete the definition. We are now going to apply that definition to the question of predestination. May I ask that someone reads Ephesians 1 verse 11 again? Ephesians chapter 1 verse 11. So in him also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. So I want us to reflect on predestination and reprobation. Predestination and reprobation. When you look at predestination as defined here in Ephesians 1 verse 11, it is related to obtaining an inheritance. Okay? The people that God has chosen and set apart to obtain an inheritance. That is their destination. And then there is the reprobation side of things. So I want us to work through this in the context of this idea of a decree. So let's begin with defining predestination. What is predestination? Maybe you do have an answer to that question. What do you think it is? What is predestination? Let me borrow a definition from James Fisher. He says, it is God's unchangeable purpose or decree concerning the last end and eternal state of angels and men. All right? It is God's unchangeable purpose or decree concerning the last end and eternal purpose of angels and men. So this means God elects those whom he saves, but at the same time, and I want you to notice this, he passes over those he leaves for condemnation. So he elects some for salvation, he bypasses others, leaving them to be condemned. So election is about choosing some for salvation, and reprobation is about bypassing others, leaving them to their own sin, the consequences of their own sin, which will include destruction. So those are the two ideas we need to hold in balance. And that is really what predestination looks like. Now, a double predestination view or idea will not speak in terms of those whom God has not chosen. He leaves them to the consequences of their sin. It is like in the same way that he chooses people unconditionally, he determines their end unconditionally. So it's not that they deserve to go there, it's that in his sovereign power, he has decided that's where they will go. What we are saying here is that reprobation is about God leaving people to suffer the consequences for sins they committed. So if they end up in hell, it is because they deserve to go to hell. Yes, according to God's decree, because He did not choose them, they are going to go to hell. But there is this element that relates to their responsibility. They chose to sin, they chose not to repent, therefore they are going to hell. And in God's justice, He gives them what is their due. That's an important emphasis. Okay, so let's look at election as taught here in Ephesians 1, verse 4 and 5, and then we'll go on to look at reprobation as well from another passage. Let's look at election, Ephesians 1, verse 3. We're interested in verse 4 in particular, and we'll read it alongside verse 5. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ, just as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before Him in love, having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to Himself, according to the good pleasure of His will, to the praise of the glory of His grace, by which He made us acceptable in the Beloved. Now it says He chose us in Him. What do you understand by that? He chose us in Him, having predestined us to adoption as sons. What do you understand by the fact that He chose us in Him? Yeah, what do the others think about that? Are you saying that Christ merited our election? That Christ bought our election? He chose us. It sounds a bit Arminian to some extent. It's like He chose us because he could see that Christ had already done this work for us. So He first sees Christ and then He chooses us because of what Christ will have done. So it sounds like Christ purchased our election. All right. Let's clarify this. He chose us in Christ basically means that He chose us so that Christ can save us. So He chose us for salvation. The reason He chose us was so we can get saved. So He chooses us from among a people who are fallen. They are totally depraved. Okay? So they don't have the ability to live a holy life. They don't have the ability to choose God themselves. They are dead in trespasses and sins. So He's choosing from them, and the reason He's choosing them is so that He can save them. And the one who will save them is Christ. Okay. So Christ doesn't merit our election. Christ merits our salvation. He chooses us so we can benefit from the salvation that Christ will bring. So the election itself is unconditional. He doesn't choose us because we have done something good, nor does he choose us because we will do something good. We have no ability to do any good. We can therefore not be seen to have the potential to do anything good in the future. We are totally depraved. Every aspect of our being has been defiled by sin. So when God chooses us, it's completely unconditional. It's not because of what he is seeing in us. He is moved by his own pleasure to choose us. Take a look at Jacob and Esau, who we are told about in Romans chapter 9. Jacob was not always a righteous man. Okay? He stole his brother's birthright. Okay? The brother also did wrong by, selling it for some kind of porridge. And he also stole his brother's blessing. So there were things in Jacob that were not very nice. But God chose him. And God chose him over Esau. Why did he choose Jacob? Was it because Jacob was better than Esau? No. He chose him because it pleased him. Why did he bypass Esau? Was it because he was very bad? Well, the answer is no. It's because it pleased him. It so happens that we can also find blame in Esau. But ultimately, it did not please God to choose Esau. It pleased God to choose Jacob. And the choice was unconditional. That is the first point we notice. The salvation that the elect will experience will be secured by the Lord Jesus Christ. So God chose us. God also chose our Savior. God chose us for salvation. Our Savior is the one who will secure that salvation. So election is unconditional. Salvation is purchased by Christ. And we are chosen to benefit from the salvation that Christ purchased. That is what is meant by being chosen in Christ. It's being chosen so we can be saved by Christ and we can become united to Christ. That's about election. What about reprobation? We can read Romans 9, 21 and 22, and we can also go to 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 8. Now, in Romans chapter 9, verse 21 to 22, it says, "Has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? What if God, choosing to show his wrath and to make known his power, has endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction? Now, the way this sounds is in the same way that God chose to elect unconditionally. He chose to leave some to perish unconditionally. We have to be slightly careful, in the way we phrase that. God chooses to elect unconditionally, but God also chooses to bypass those who deserve to be damned. Okay? And the way to look at it is this: both those he chooses to save and those he chooses to bypass, before they are chosen and before they are bypassed, they both have fallen. They are fallen in Adam. Okay? So because they are both fallen, they both deserve to go to hell for their fallenness and sin. Okay? So they are all part of this lump of clay. They are all fallen in Adam. They all deserve to go to hell. Okay? When he chooses some, he is effectively deciding that he's going to save some of those people. Those that he doesn't save, he is effectively saying he's going to leave them. So choosing some lump of clay for honorable use is equivalent to choosing them for salvation. And leaving others for dishonorable use is equivalent to saying he leaves them in the condition where they naturally were, the fallen condition, and they will suffer the consequences for their sin. Now, let's go back to how we were defining God's decree, okay, in our last session. There is a decree that is efficient and direct, and there is a decree that is permissive and therefore indirect. When people sin, were they decreed to sin? Yes. But that decree takes a permissive character. It means, yes, they are going to sin according to God's plan. But how it's going to happen is that they will choose to sin, they will desire to sin, and they will therefore suffer the consequences for choosing and desiring to sin. That's how we described it when we were describing a decree in general. Well, we now come to particularize it, okay? So they are in the same boat. They are all fallen. He chooses some for salvation. So from eternity, he had decreed that he's going to choose these for salvation, so they'll be saved. They will utilize the means he has appointed to experience that salvation. Well, what about those that he doesn't choose? Well, he had decreed that they are not going to be saved. They will be destroyed. But how will that come about? It is a permissive decree. Okay? They are going to disbelieve the gospel. They are going to refuse to repent. And so they are going to end up destroyed. Now, we can prove that by reading the other scripture. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 8. 1 Peter 2, verse 8. Let's read that alongside verse 7. Therefore, to you who believe, he is precious. But to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense. They stumble, and I want you to notice that verse. They stumble being disobedient to the word, to which they also were appointed. Now, look at those two things in that verse. First, it's very clear that they were appointed to stumble. Okay? It's another way of saying they were decreed. It was decreed that they will stumble. Okay? It was decreed that they will stumble. But it also says they disobeyed. So clearly, this decree takes a permissive character. The decree says they will stumble. So it's certain they are not among the elect. They are among those who will go on to suffer destruction. But how, in fact, will they get there? It's through disobedience. They will reject Christ. Okay? This one who was considered precious by those who were elected, these did not consider him precious. They stumbled over him. They rejected him. They didn't count him precious. They disobeyed. They remained unrepentant. So it takes the character of a permissive decree. Okay? So it's not as if he just said, you are going to perish, without considering how they will end up destroyed. He considered their sin, and although the decree will ensure their destruction, the decree is sensitive to their sin and therefore to the need to mete out justice upon them. Yeah, we can say they were destined for destruction, but he explains what that means. Okay. The explanation is that they are left to their own sinful choices, and so they end up destroyed. You understand that? So it's not wise to simply make a blanket statement. You have to consider the total revelation of Scripture on the matter. And when you look at it carefully, yes, we have to agree that he destined them for destruction. But the details are that they were left to their own decision to reject Christ and therefore reject salvation. And the rejection of salvation is a choice for destruction. The basis for election at one level, the basis for election and reprobation is the good pleasure of God. As that pertains to election, it's totally that the people God has chosen absolutely don't deserve to be chosen and saved. When it comes to reprobation, yeah, there is good pleasure as well. And I'll say a bit more on that. But when it comes to reproduction, God is not blind to what they have done. Okay? They've chosen to reject Christ, and they'll end up destroyed. both of those decisions glorify God. God is glorified in the election and salvation of a people, and He is also glorified in the destruction of the wicked who have chosen to disobey and to reject Christ, and so they end up destroyed. So a question I would put to you is, in what way is God glorified in the election and salvation of His people, and in what way is He being glorified in the destruction of the wicked? So in the destruction of the wicked, what is being glorified is God's justice. In the election and salvation of His people, what is being glorified is God's grace. So either way, God is receiving the glory. Once again, it's very easy to accept that in His electing grace, He can be glorified, but people struggle with accepting the fact that He should be glorified in His justice. Because somehow, a God of love should not be a God of justice. But the truth is, He is as much a God of justice as He is a God of love. And His justice, that aspect of His justice whereby He destroys the wicked, should also be glorified. So I want you to picture this. Imagine that it's after the judgment. The elect, and therefore the saved, the just, have been taken to heaven. The non-elect, the reprobates, have been sent to hell. So imagine that you are in heaven. Do you think you will rejoice over the destruction of the wicked as you watch them suffering there in hell? Yeah. And I like the way you put it. It's rejoicing in God's justice, which He is meting out upon a people who rejected Him. There might be some sorrowing over people who are being so destroyed. You know, God doesn't take pleasure in the death of the wicked, it is said. Quite likely, the people of God will also not take pleasure in watching the wicked destroy, but they will rejoice in God's justice. They will exult in God's destruction of the wicked. It's a hard doctrine. But what is important for us to observe is that it's a biblical doctrine. Okay, it's a biblical doctrine. I think it also depends on how those who hold to a double predestination explain it. If all they are saying is, it pleased God to elect some and to destroy the others, full stop. So this is just about a God who, you know, on the one hand, He really takes pleasure in choosing some people and, blessing them with salvation, and He takes pleasure in choosing, in destroying the others. So it casts God in a bad light as it relates to those that He is destroying. There is no consideration for whether they have done good or bad. In fact, they may not have done anything wrong. He just chooses to destroy them. So it presents him as a cruel, unkind God. Okay? I think that if that is how he is presented, that would be the fault I would find in it. And the basic problem there is justice. Where is his justice? Where is the God who would actually consider actions, whether they are good or bad? Now, as things stand, both those who are chosen and who are not chosen have fallen in Adam. So in that sense, they have sinned. Now, it's easy to see that those who sin, those whom he chooses and saves, it's not that he has just chosen them and saved them and said, look, your sin doesn't matter. You just go and enjoy your salvation. That's not what he does. The reason he gives them salvation is that someone else has actually died for them. Do you see the point? So there has been justice. They may not have earned their salvation, but it's earned by someone else. These others who have not been chosen, they are also sinners. Okay? And they must be destroyed, not just because God woke up one day and said, I want to destroy these people, but because he also considered their sin. And for them, there is no one who has taken care of their sin. They have to take care of it themselves. Okay, so he's left them to suffer the consequences for their sin, and they go to hell because that's what they deserve. They're going to suffer forever. So yes, God decreed that that's how it will end up, but there is an explanation as to how in the end they end up that way. Yeah, I think the point is that when people are suffering the consequences for their sin, whatever form that suffering takes, God is moved to pity them, and God often wants to go out of his way to relieve that suffering. That relief may not amount to salvation. It may just be an expression of a common grace, okay? But it's an expression of mercy. And it's natural, if we may put it that way, for God to do that, to be moved in that way. Destroying people, that is like not showing pity, okay? That is like not showing compassion. So it is like doing the unnatural. Okay, so Edwards is really contrasting how God is usually moved by people who are suffering. It's suffering the consequence of theirs for their sin. He's moved to pity them. When he judges them, it's like he shuts out this feeling of pity and compassion. So that is what makes it unnatural. I think I'm trying to interpret Goodwin or Jonathan Edwards. I would think that's what they have in mind. Yeah, it's an Arminian view. If you say he elected us because he saw that Christ would die for us. So that is like saying Christ merited our election. that is not how the Bible presents it. He didn't merit our salvation. Our election. He merited our salvation. So he elected us unconditionally to benefit from the salvation that Christ merited, Christ bought. Yeah, that is an Arminian view. It makes it conditional. It makes it a conditional election. Because what is being said there is that he elects us on the basis of what he foreknows or foresees we are going to do. So whatever he foresees we are going to do, that becomes the condition for the election. No, he knows that we'll be saved because he chose us to be saved. So if he planned to choose us to be saved, he will certainly know about it. But it's a salvation he will do. Okay? His son is going to do it. So I'll choose them so that my son can save them. That's the plan. He knows about it ahead of time. That's different from saying, as Arminians do, God sees ahead of time that you're going to be a believer in Christ. So because you will believe, he chooses you on that basis. Who exactly is the mover? What exactly is the ground of that election? It's your faith in Christ. That is not what God teaches, on our election. Election is totally unconditional. Salvation is the one which is conditioned on the work of Christ and our faith in him. The foreknowledge of God is not a bare prescience. It doesn't mean simply that he knows about something, but is not in control of it. He knows about it because he planned it. The same way that an architect knows what a building is what a building is going to look like. He knows what it's going to look like ahead of time because he actually planned it. So he knows you are going to be saved in Christ because he actually planned it. So the foreknowledge is a foreordination as well. The language they use is eco-ultimacy. Ultimately, election and reprobation were according to the pleasure of God. Ultimately, that's what God wanted. Ultimately, okay. So there's an equal ultimacy. It doesn't remove this detail that those who are ultimately destroyed are destroyed because they rejected the gospel. That detail is there in spite of the fact that there is an equal ultimacy between God's decision to choose some and God's decision to bypass others. Ultimately, that was his pleasure. It doesn't mean those who end up destroyed were not responsible for rejecting Christ and therefore missing out on salvation. But remember, who is he electing from? Is he electing from righteous people or fallen people? He chooses them. He decrees to choose them, to choose Jacob before he was born. In his decree, it is already known that he will be fallen and elected. Okay? In his decree, he is viewed as fallen. And he is viewed as being elected from a fallen race. The election is not an election from nothing. So even if he hasn't yet come about, he's not yet born, in the mind of God, he is being viewed as fallen, and he is being elected from a fallen race. Do you see the point? So the very fact that it's happening in the plan doesn't mean there is no consideration of the fact that he's fallen. If you look at the order of the decrees, those things were happening in the mind of God. So what comes first in the mind of God? Well, what comes first is that he will create a people. They are not yet there, but they will be there. Number two, he will permit them to fall. They haven't yet fallen, but they will fall. Then he will elect from those who have fallen. They haven't yet been elected, but they will be elected. Then he will reveal salvation to them. It hasn't yet been revealed to them, because they are not there anyway, but it will be revealed to them. So even at the planning level, the election from the fallen is a certainty. Good, thank you for those questions. They make us think. Okay, let's take the last few minutes just to look at how this, it sounds so abstract, almost as if it's practically irrelevant. But what practical lessons can we draw from this? Remember the twin doctrines of God's sovereignty and human responsibility. Although God chooses those whom he will save, he also chooses the instruments through which they will be saved. And according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 13, the instruments are the preaching of the word and the work of the Spirit. Okay? Paul says God chose you to be saved through, let me read precisely how he phrases it. Yeah, he says, but we are bound to give thanks to God always for you, brethren, beloved by the Lord, because God from the beginning chose you for salvation through sanctification by the Spirit and belief in the truth. Through sanctification by the Spirit and belief in the truth, to which you were called by our gospel for the obtaining of the glory of our Lord Jesus Christ. So the elect won't just find themselves saved. They have to listen to preaching. And the Spirit must open their minds to see their sinfulness and to believe the gospel. So if they have to listen to preaching, it follows that the evangelist, the preacher, must give himself fully to ensuring that they hear that preaching. So you can't fall back and say, well, they are chosen to be saved, they will be saved anyway. They are chosen to be saved through the hearing of preaching. So as an evangelist, you need to have an attitude that says, you're almost saying it depends on me to give them the gospel. Don't worry about God's part. God will do his part. God is also saying, it depends on me to choose them and open their minds to hear that gospel. So God is 100% committed to doing his part, you must be 100% committed to doing your part. And you're not saying, well, God has done it anyway, so I don't have to do my part. You have to do your part. If you didn't do that, you would be behaving like a hyper-Calvinist. And hyper-Calvinism is an error which we must resist and reject. Yeah. You can't understand all of this and still be proud. If you know that you are what you are by the grace of God, you have nothing to boast about. Because what you are is a work of God from beginning to end. So that humbles you, that fills you with thanksgiving. And if you believe that God ordained the end as well as the means, you will give yourself to working hard at evangelism so that others may also hear the gospel and experience the salvation you have experienced. So it encourages you to work harder, to heighten your sense of responsibility, and it gives you hope. You know, God chose you for salvation. Salvation includes going to heaven. And the very fact that he has applied that salvation to you, you are experiencing it, also means he will see to it that you experience it in heaven. You experience it to the end. So you live your life in hope. You don't live in despair, in hope.